The early morning air hums with the scent of fresh basil, warm earth, and ripe tomatoes. Sunlight spills over the neat rows of vegetables in my backyard garden, turning dewdrops into tiny prisms. My hands, stained with rich, dark soil, work rhythmically, plucking green beans and setting them in a woven basket. I love this, the quiet, the growth, the connection to the land. It's the kind of peace that nourishes both body and soul. I stand and stretch, glancing toward the front yard. A simple wooden farm stand sits under the shade of a sprawling oak, stocked with fresh produce, cucumbers, heirloom tomatoes, sweet peppers, and my famous homemade jams. A handwritten sign reads, "Pay what you can, fresh and local." It's been a hit in the neighborhood. Folks stop by on their morning walks, dropping a few dollars into the lockbox or leaving handwritten notes of gratitude. For Mrs. Alvarez down the street, who's on a fixed income, it means fresh vegetables, without the supermarket prices. For single dad Jason, it's a way to feed his kids without shame. And for me, it's more than a stand. It's a symbol of community, of sharing. But not everyone sees it that way. A black SUV slows as it rolls past my house. The tinted window lowers just enough for a pair of sharp eyes to glare at me. Margaret Langston, head of the HOA. Her lips press into a tight line before the window glides back up. The car lingers for a moment before moving on. I sigh. This isn't the first time she's made it clear she doesn't approve of my way of doing things. Not in her neighborhood. Her issue with me isn't just about the farm stand. It never has been. My home, modest but well-kept, is one of the few in the subdivision owned by a black family. When I moved in 5 years ago, I saw the way Margaret's smile tightened, how the other HOA members suddenly took a keen interest in enforcing rules they'd ignored for years. First, it was the color of my front door, too bright. Then the basketball hoop my nephew loved, unsightly. Now it's my farm stand. A slight breeze rustles the leaves, but there's a heaviness in the air. I shake it off, dusting my hands on my jeans. No use worrying about Margaret. The farm stand isn't going anywhere. A car pulls into the driveway and my best friend, Alicia, steps out. She takes one look at my face and raises an eyebrow. "Margaret?" she asks. I nod. She did the slow roll again. Alicia groans. "Lord, give me strength. That woman acts like she owns this place." I chuckle, but a prickle of unease lingers in my gut. I tell myself it's nothing. Just another passive-aggressive glance from a woman who's made it her life's mission to keep me in my place. But I don't know yet, this time, she's not just watching. She's planning. And soon, she's going to make her move. The letter arrives on a crisp white sheet, folded neatly into an envelope bearing the HOA's embossed seal. I find it tucked into my screen door that evening, the paper cool and stiff between my fingers. The words are sharp, formal. Notice of noncompliance. My farm stand, it claims, is a commercial enterprise that violates neighborhood regulations. The letter gives me 7 days to shut it down or face fines. I exhale slowly, forcing my hands to unclench. It's not surprising. Margaret Langston has been gunning for me since the day I moved in. She never says it outright, never gives me anything concrete to hold against her. But I see it in the way she patrols the neighborhood, like she's guarding some invisible gate. The way she's always quick to remind me about the rules, even as others break them without consequence. I think of Mrs. Davidson, 3 streets over, who sells homemade candles out of her garage every holiday season. The Johnsons, who host yard sales every summer. No one's ever slapped them with a violation. This isn't about regulations. It's about control. Alicia is over when I show her the letter. She reads it once, then again, her jaw tightening. "Oh, hell no," she mutters. "This is some bull." I hold up a hand. "I know." She narrows her eyes. "You gonna fight it?" "Of course," I say, but there's a weight in my chest. I don't trust Margaret. The way she watches me, the way she moves through this neighborhood like a queen overseeing her domain, it unsettles me. She's used to getting her way. And when someone like her is challenged, they don't back down. They escalate. Days pass and the pressure builds. It starts small. The next morning, my farm stand is knocked over. Tomatoes spilled across the pavement, baskets overturned, my sign lying in the dirt. The lockbox, where people leave their payments, is missing. I stand there, my stomach twisting. It could have been the wind. Could have been kids. But deep down, I know better. Alicia comes by later, hands on her hips. You think it was her? I don't know, I say, but the doubt is thin. That night, I hear a car idling outside my house. When I glance through the blinds, I see the black SUV. Margaret's car. She's not alone. Someone else is in the passenger seat. I can't see their faces, but I feel their eyes on my house, on me. A slow, creeping anger coils in my chest. Margaret isn't just trying to make me uncomfortable.
She's trying to scare me.
Trying to make me fold. But she doesn't know me. I pick up my phone, snapping a picture of the SUV. If Margaret wants a fight, she's about to get one. I don't scare easy. Margaret Langston might be used to folks bowing down, but she picked the wrong one this time. The next morning, I marched straight to the HOA office, letter in hand. The office is really just a fancy name for a converted room in the neighborhood clubhouse, a space Margaret treats like her personal throne room. I push open the door. Inside, Margaret sits behind a heavy oak desk, a smug smile curling her lips. Next to her is Tom Whitaker, the HOA's so-called legal advisor, a man who conveniently shows up whenever they want to make their harassment look official. Margaret folds her hands, tilting her head like I'm a child she's about to scold. I assume you're here about the compliance letter? I drop it on her desk. You're targeting me. We both know it. Her smile doesn't falter.
Now.
We have rules for a reason, dear. Your farm stand is an unapproved commercial activity. Home businesses are not allowed under HOA guidelines. I exhale through my nose. Then why haven't you shut down Mrs. Davidson's candle sales? Or the Johnson's yard sales? Tom clears his throat. We enforce rules as complaints arise. Someone reported your stand. I cross my arms. And I'm sure you had nothing to do with that. Margaret leans forward slightly. It's not personal, dear. But if you refuse to comply, we'll have to start issuing fines. I clench my jaw. You mean extortion? Margaret's smile widens.
Call it what you like.
But you will comply. Margaret doubles down. By the time I leave, my hands are shaking with anger. I won't be bullied. If Margaret wants a fight, she's getting one. I start by talking to my neighbors. Mrs. Alvarez, Jason, the Walkers, people who rely on my farm stand. I show them the letter. Share what Margaret said. Jason frowns. That's messed up. She never said anything when my kids ran a lemonade stand last summer. Mrs. Alvarez sighs. It's because you're you and she's her. She doesn't want people like us feeling comfortable here. People nod, murmuring in agreement. Alicia, always ready for a battle, steps up. We should fight this. Petition. Rally the neighborhood. The idea takes root fast. Within a day, we've gathered dozens of signatures supporting my farm stand. Neighbors post on our community forum, calling out the HOA's hypocrisy. The pressure is building. But Margaret won't go down without a fight. The next morning, I wake up to a notice taped to my front door. Final warning, remove the farm stand within 48 hours or face legal action. And that's not all. My water bill suddenly skyrockets. A mysterious asterisk violation notice appears about my fence height. Even my trash pickup is skipped. Margaret is weaponizing the HOA. I document everything. Take photos. Screenshot emails. Even record conversations. I'm building my case. But then, she makes her biggest move yet. The next evening, as I'm bringing in the last of my vegetables, flashing red and blue lights fill my yard. A police car pulls up. 2 officers step out, hands resting on their belts. One looks sheepish. The other? Stone-faced. The taller cop clears his throat. We got a report about an unlicensed vendor operating here. Someone said you're selling without a permit. My stomach drops. Margaret called the cops on me. Alicia, who's sitting on my porch, jumps up. You gotta be kidding me. I keep my voice steady. This is my property. I'm not breaking any laws. The cop hesitates. Do you have a permit? I glare. You don't need a permit for a pay-what-you-can farm stand. This isn't a commercial business. The second cop sighs. Look, we're just following up. But if the HOA keeps pushing, this could turn into a zoning issue. Translation: Margaret is trying to get me fined, or worse, shut down completely. Alicia mutters, this is harassment. I meet the cop's eyes. Did Margaret Langston report me? A beat of silence. The first cop doesn't answer, but the slight flicker in his expression tells me everything I need to know. I refuse to back down. After they leave, Alicia grips my arm. We need to hit back. Hard. I nod. I have an idea. Margaret thinks she has all the power. But she doesn't know that I've been recording everything.
And now?
I'm about to turn the whole neighborhood against her. The HOA meeting is packed. Neighbors fill every chair in the community clubhouse, voices buzzing with tension. Margaret sits at the front, flanked by her usual cronies, Tom Whitaker and a few board members who never question her authority. Her hands rest delicately on a stack of documents, her expression carefully composed. She thinks this is over. That tonight, she'll make her final decree and shut me down for good. I stand near the back, arms crossed, my heart pounding, but not with fear. With determination. Because tonight, she's the one who's about to get shut down. Margaret takes the stage. She clears her throat, tapping her manicured nails against the mic. Let's get started, shall we? Her voice is light, almost pleasant. Fake as ever. First order of business, neighborhood compliance violations. She flicks her eyes toward me, the smallest smirk curling her lips. As you all know, we've had an ongoing issue regarding an unauthorized farm stand. Murmurs ripple through the crowd. Not all of them are friendly. Margaret continues. We have rules in place for a reason. Homeowners Association guidelines are designed to maintain the integrity and property values of our community. And unfortunately, she clasps her hands together like she's delivering bad news she's so sad about. This particular stand is a clear violation. Jason from down the street raises a hand. How come you never enforce this rule on the yard sales? Or the Christmas market? Margaret's smile tightens. Those are temporary. This, she gestures vaguely in my direction, is an ongoing business. We cannot allow this kind of disruption in our neighborhood. Disruption. Alicia scoffs. You mean fresh food? Helping neighbors? Margaret ignores her, turning back to the crowd. As a result, the board has unanimously agreed that this farm stand must be removed immediately or fines will be issued. She looks at me now, her eyes gleaming. She thinks she's won. I step forward.
Calm.
Steady. Ready. Interesting, I say, my voice carrying through the room. Because I've got a few things I'd like to share too. The trap is set. I pull out my laptop and connect it to the projector. The screen flickers to life. Margaret frowns. This isn't on the agenda. I think the community deserves the full story, I interrupt. Since we're talking about rules and disruptions. I click play. Security footage fills the screen. The room goes silent. The first clip? Margaret's SUV, parked outside my house late at night. The second? A masked figure knocking over my farm stand. The face isn't visible, but the car parked down the street? The same black SUV.
People gasp.
A murmur builds. Margaret goes pale. I let the footage play for a few more seconds before pausing. Then I pull up emails. Screenshots from neighbors who've been unfairly fined, harassed, and intimidated by the HOA, always at Margaret's discretion. I turn back to the crowd. I've documented everything. Every selective enforcement. Every bias complaint. Every abuse of power. I level my gaze at Margaret. This isn't about rules. It's about control. Margaret snaps. This is outrageous, she shrieks, standing so fast her chair nearly topples. This is a blatant attempt to slander me. You have no proof that I had anything to do with. Actually, I cut in, grinning now. I do. I press one final button. An audio recording plays. Her voice. Caught on my phone the night the cops came. I don't care what you have to do. Call the city. Call the police. I want that stand gone. The room erupts.
Gasps. Shouts.
People turn to each other, whispering, furious. Margaret's face twists in horror. This is a misunderstanding. She looks at Tom, but even he won't meet her eyes now. Because in that moment she knows.
She's lost.
Margaret freezes. For the first time since this battle began, she has no script, no control. The audio of her voice, so smug, so certain, still lingers in the air like smoke. The neighbors, her once loyal subjects, turn on her in real time. A woman in the back shakes her head. She called the cops over a Farmstand? Jason mutters. She always talks about preserving the neighborhood. But this is just straight-up abuse. Margaret grasps for control. She raises a shaking hand, pasting on that fake, patronizing smile. This is all being taken out of context. She laughs, but it's a thin, desperate sound. You people are letting yourselves get manipulated by someone who doesn't even understand how HOAs work. Alicia crosses her arms. Oh, we understand, Margaret. We just finally see how you work. A wave of agreement ripples through the crowd. Margaret panics. She turns to Tom. You knew about this. Say something. Tom, the loyal enforcer, shrinks. He looks at the gathered neighbors, then at me. For once, he seems to be doing some quick mental math. And he doesn't like the equation. I had no prior knowledge of these actions, he says carefully. The HOA acts as a collective body, and I certainly wouldn't support anything improper. Margaret gapes. He's abandoning her. Jumping ship. But it's not over yet. Because I've saved the best for last. The final nail in the coffin. I step forward, calm, measured. Margaret, I say, since you're so concerned about rules, I figured you'd want to know. You've been breaking some yourself. She flinches. What are you talking about? I hold up my phone and click to the next document. It fills the projector screen. A legal notice. An official HOA charter violation. I turn to the crowd. Margaret here has been issuing fines and complaints without board approval. According to the HOA bylaws, all enforcement actions require a majority vote. I glance at the board members, Margaret's former loyalists. Did any of you vote on these fines? They shift uncomfortably. One woman shakes her head. That's funny, I say, feigning confusion. Because there's a paper trail. Emails, notices, all issued unilaterally by Margaret. Which means I pause for effect. Every fine she's issued is legally invalid. The room erupts.
Shouts.
Murmurs. People who've been fined for petty things, mailboxes, fence colors, parking, realizing they've been scammed. And then the final blow. A man in a dark suit steps forward from the back of the room. A city investigator. He clears his throat. Ms. Langston, he says, voice even but firm, we've been conducting a review of HOA complaints in this neighborhood. And based on recent findings, we will be launching a formal investigation into financial misconduct. Margaret's face drains of color. What? She stammers. He holds up a folder. Multiple residents have reported fines and fees that were never officially filed with city records. Which means someone has been pocketing them. If that's true, it's fraud. Margaret staggers. Her world collapses in slow motion. People turn away from her. Whispers rise. The board members look at each other, then at her. I see it in real time. Her kingdom crumbling. Her hands tremble as she grips the podium. You can't do this. I built this neighborhood. Alicia laughs.
Nah.
You just rolled over it. And your reign. She smirks. It's over. Margaret looks around, searching for an escape. But there is none. The community, the people she thought she controlled, no longer fear her. And I watch as the woman who tried to destroy me gets exactly what she deserves. Margaret Langston doesn't return to the clubhouse that night. The moment the city investigator mentioned fraud, she bolted, her polished confidence crumbling, her face an open canvas of panic and fear. But there's no running from the truth. The fall of Margaret Langston. By morning, the neighborhood explodes with the news. Margaret has been removed from the HOA board, pending investigation. The city freezes all the fines she issued, and every homeowner who paid into her personal slush fund, they're getting their money back. Her empire?
Gone.
And the cherry on top? A week later, a news crew shows up at her house. I watch from my porch as a reporter stands outside her once imposing brick home, microphone in hand. Margaret Langston, former HOA president, is under investigation for financial misconduct, misuse of authority, and discriminatory enforcement of HOA policies. Neighbors claim she targeted specific residents while allowing others to violate rules without consequence. The camera catches Margaret peeking through her blinds, her once pristine world reduced to a prison of her own making. She wanted to control the neighborhood. Now, she's too ashamed to step outside.
Reclaiming my space.
The first thing I do after her downfall? I reopen my Farmstand. No more letters. No more threats. No more fear. The first day back, neighbors flood in, not just for produce but to support. To show that they won't be bullied again. Mrs. Alvarez gives me a tight hug. Jason drops off a freshly painted sign for my stand. Alicia grins and says, "Told you we'd win." It's not just about the food anymore. It's about taking back what's ours. A neighborhood transformed. Margaret ruled by fear.
Now,
We move by unity. People speak up more. The new HOA leadership? Transparent, fair, diverse. The same neighbors who once ignored injustice? They're paying attention now. One afternoon, Mr. Dawson, one of Margaret's old supporters, walks up to me. He hesitates, clearing his throat. I never thought about how unfair it was, he admits, rubbing the back of his neck. I figured the rules were the rules. But now I see they weren't the same for everybody. I study him for a moment, then nod. Now you do. He exhales. I'm sorry, and I believe him. Because change isn't just about tearing down the bad. It's about building something better. Final justice. A few months later, I hear the final nail in Margaret's coffin. She's being sued. Homeowners who were wrongfully fined are taking legal action. The city's investigation uncovered years of financial misconduct. And Margaret? She's moving out. Her house, once the symbol of her power, now has a big for sale sign in front of it. I walk past it one last time. No anger. No resentment. Just a deep, satisfying peace. She tried to erase me,
tried to silence me.
but in the end, she lost everything. And I'm still here.